Joining us right now, GOP political strategist, co-founder of MustReadTexas.com, Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you?
Doing great, Chad. Good morning.
Thanks for coming on today. Let's talk a little bit about some of the big statewide news that's out there. Rick Perry, Politico, covering his, ambitions over the weekend, saying that the governor will have quite a few donors and experts in over the next couple of days down in Austin, correct?
Yeah, well, really over the next month, I think. Series of dinners and meetings that both his political team and he himself will have. And, this is part of the pre-campaign where you're trying to get, bundlers lined up so you can raise the hard dollars that it's necessary to raise to have a credible chance to be the nominee.
Do you think that Rick Perry has done enough to, get away from that oops moment that he had in the last presidential campaign?
I do. I think he's done enough rehabilitation to have a shot. I'm not sure that I'd say he's a top 3 or top 4 candidate in 2016. But I do think that he has some things to work with. He's a great retail campaigner. Obviously, the state of Texas is still in great shape, and it's a great story. He's run before, and I think that's actually an advantage because he knows what to expect. And I do think he's shown a lot of improvement. And I think Americans like a comeback, and they like to see someone who's grown. And I think they're fairly forgiving. So, we'll see. It'll be interesting to watch, see how he performs.
In the potential GOP field, where do you think Perry positions himself? Do you think he puts himself in the middle of a Ted Cruz and Chris Christie, where he's not as moderate as Chris Christie is? He may not be as far right as Ted Cruz. Do you think it's a nice, comfortable middle almost for Rick Perry?
It can be. I mean, there's two ways to look at that, right? One is, the only thing in the middle of the road are dead armadillos and yellow lines. But the other way to look at it is to say, maybe the nominee's not going to be moderate, maybe the nominee's not going to be a hard-right conservative. And so for Perry, I think the smart way to position himself is to say, I'm the electable conservative. My record's conservative. I'm not a hard-right, really hard-right conservative who's not electable. But I'm also not a moderate. And I think his record, whether it be on immigration, certainly sending the National Guard down to the border and focusing on border security, whether it be on getting the Texas economic miracle up and running and showing that and demonstrating the success of that over 10 years, being the most pro-life governor in the history of the state of Texas and perhaps in the entire country. He's got a fairly good record to go out there and sell. He just has to go out there and sell it and do it in a way that helps people forget the image that he had in 2012. I think he can do it. It is a high-wire act anytime you run for president, and the scrutiny will be intense. And so for him, he's going to have to go out and perform well in Iowa and hopefully perform well in South Carolina and see where the chips fall.
As we do look ahead into next year and all these campaigns that are going to get revving, whether they be on the Democratic side, on the Republican side, how soon in 2015 do you really anticipate things getting started?
Well, one thing to watch is that you've got 3 or 4 governors who have legislative sessions, and so they're not going to be able to announce until after the legislative sessions, right? Scott Walker, Wisconsin, Mike Pence of Indiana, John Kasich of Ohio. Those 3 all have legislative sessions. I think Chris Christie in New Jersey has a legislative session, has to get a budget done. So all of them are going to have work to do back home. Then if you look at the Senate, the 3 U.S. senators looking at running, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, and Marco Rubio, are all going to have votes. And you saw Mitch McConnell say they're going to start working Fridays. And their votes are going to be needed because they're going to need 60 votes to proceed to any legislation. And they're going to have 53 Republicans if we win in Louisiana on Saturday. So you're going to need those 53 votes plus 7 more. So, I think for those candidates that have a day job, it's going to be tough to take formal steps, I think, in the first quarter of next year. Now, for the other types of candidates, they may be more free. Someone like Rick Perry may be more free, or perhaps a Jeb Bush, although I think he'll wait if he chooses to run. So, look, I think you're going to see them take some steps, exploratory committees, early state travel, things like that, in the first quarter. But I think really around April or so, you're going to really start seeing things happen.
You brought up Saturday in the election over in Louisiana, which is something that naturally, throughout the nation, people are concentrating on Ferguson. They've been concentrating on Thanksgiving, now Christmas. So really only Louisiana, it seems, has been paying attention to this runoff election. Have Democrats completely abandoned Mary Landrieu?
Yeah, I mean, they have. She was one vote short of getting Keystone passed through the Senate. I mean, the fact that she couldn't get one more person to help her on just this one thing, I thought was pretty telling. But even setting that aside, she was in a really tough spot to begin with. And if you just look at the early vote numbers, based on the analysis I've seen, it basically is looking as it did on November 4th. And on November 4th, she and Cassidy were tied, and then the Tea Party conservative candidate had 10 or 15%. So, she's going to lose. My guess is something like 55 to 42 or something like that, somewhere between 10 and 15 points. I suspect at the end of the day, it's going to be a drubbing. And it's going to, elect the next Republican U.S. senator. They'll give him 53 out of 100.
When Republicans come back and Republicans get in power next year, when they're in control of the Senate, when they're in control of the House, it's going to put a lot of pressure on GOP leadership to get some stuff done.
Yeah.
How do you anticipate that going, and what can the average American really look forward to, this Congress and the White House getting accomplished over the next couple of years?
It's a good question, because obviously you still have the president in the White House who's likely to veto most everything. First of all, I think there's a chance they're going to get tax reform done. I think it's something the president wants. And you have Paul Ryan at Ways and Means now, and I think this is something that he really wants to do. So I think the stars are aligning for tax reform. I think that could be very significant if that happens over the next 2 years. You're going to shut down a lot of the Obama agenda. The Senate has been protecting President Obama and his agenda for the last really 6 years, and you're going to really shut that down. How they want to use the power of the purse remains to be seen. If they put policy writers on must-pass appropriations bills, are they able to cut spending? Are they able to increase border security? Do they do anything on the executive amnesty? These are all questions that we don't know the answer to quite yet. You're going to have to see Republicans unify, particularly in the Senate, because just because we have 53 votes doesn't mean you can pass things on a majority. You have to get 60 votes on everything but the budget. So, it's going to be interesting to see what they try to do. I think the lame duck has really kind of fizzled. There hasn't been that much action, and I don't think there will be over the next 2 weeks. So. They're going to come in with, I think, a pretty blank slate, and they're going to be able to do some key things that they want to do, and it'll be interesting to see.
Visiting with Matt Mackowiak. Matt, what can folks find on mustreadtexas.com today?
Yeah, just start an update from over the weekend. A couple interesting stories from over the weekend. You do have a special election coming up here for the Senate seat of Glenn Hager that I think State Rep Lois Kolkhorst is likely to win. So that's one thing to watch, and obviously the legislative session gets closer every day. But you can find all the top news on mustreadtexas.com. All
right, and you can also follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Mackowiak. Matt, thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, Chad. Have a great week.
You too.